Hey there, lovely people. Welcome to the Rewrite Your Life Story podcast, hosted by your favourite duo, Stephen and Sharlene. They're here to help you transform your mindset and create a positive outlook on life. Are you tired of feeling stuck and unfulfilled? Are you ready to take control of your thoughts and emotions and rewrite your story? Well, you're in the right place. They will be sharing inspiring stories, practical tips, and expert advice to help you on your journey to a better you. You'll learn how to let go of negative self-talk, embrace your strengths, and focus on the good things in life. Each episode will be joined by amazing guests who have rewritten their own life stories and are now living their best lives. From successful entrepreneurs to accomplished athletes, we'll bring you stories of resilience, courage, and triumph. So grab a cup of coffee, get cozy, and get ready to be inspired. Tune in every week for a new episode of the Rewrite Your Life Story podcast. Let's rewrite our stories together and make every day count.
Welcome to this episode of Rewrite Your Life Story. For the first episode, we decided to tell our story and the purpose of this podcast. Join us as we get vulnerable and share our journey with you.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in to our podcast. Today, we'll be discussing some great tips on how to live a more positive life and rewrite your story. Before we get started, we want to remind you that the information presented in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and their guests are their own and do not represent the views of any organisation or entity. Additionally, any information presented should not be taken as legal, medical, or financial advice. Always consult with a licensed professional in the respective field for any advice or guidance. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's dive into today's topic and learn how to transform our lives through positive thinking and taking control of our stories. Thanks for joining us.
Before we begin this episode of Rewrite Your Life Story, we want to provide a trigger warning. This podcast explores personal stories and experiences that may touch upon sensitive topics. We believe in the power of storytelling to inspire, heal, and create connections. However, we understand that certain stories or discussions may evoke strong emotions or memories. If you find yourself triggered or overwhelmed during this episode, we encourage you to prioritize your well-being. Take a pause, breathe, and know that it's okay to step away if you need to. Reach out to a trusted friend, family member, or mental health professional for support. They can provide a listening ear and guidance during difficult moments. Remember, you are not alone, and there are resources available to help you navigate these feelings. Take care of yourself and engage in self-care practices that bring you comfort and peace. Thank you for listening, and let's continue this journey of rewriting our life stories with compassion and understanding.
Hey everyone, it's Stephen and Sharlene from Rewrite Your Life Story. And over the last month, Sharlene and I, or a couple of months, we've been interviewing a lot of people for our podcast and finding out of how different people rewrote their life story. But this is actually episode 1. So we're going back and recording our story. And the reason why we're doing that is because we want our audience to know why we started Rewrite Your Life Story, why we started the podcast, and also so that you can get to know our story, our journey, and why this podcast is so important to us as well, and hopefully important to you as well. So Sharlene, this is going to be interesting. I'm going to ask Sharlene directed questions and she's going to ask me directed questions. However, we wanted this to really come from our heart and a heart space. So none of this is prepared. None of this is, we've got no questions.
Totally ad lib, right?
Totally ad lib. We've got a few basic points on the direction we wanted to go. So just come along with this journey so we can tell you about our story and how it all started. So we've been married 23 years now.
Yes.
And we've actually known each other for over 30. So we met when I was 14.
That's right.
And so it's quite a long time. We're now in our mid to late 40s. So it's been quite a long time. We've known each other and then eventually been together. So Sharlene, do you want to just expand a little bit on that, on our first encounters and that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it was interesting having met you for the first time through a mutual friend, and just hearing about like the caring and generous person you were. I've always had this thing in my mind that like I wanted to meet you.
Oh, so she spoke about me beforehand.
Yeah, she'd already spoken about pre-prepared me beforehand. And she's always talking about like how nice, like how caring you are and how sensitive, and well, this sounds like a nice person. And when I saw you for the first time, I thought I kind of already recognized you, without having like I knew that would have been you.
Right.
Yeah, it was really interesting feeling for me, like knowing that okay, this is the person that my friend was talking about.
Mind you, when we first met, I was very overweight. I was almost around 200 kilos. And that's a whole other story around that.
Yeah.
But you never saw that,
That's
which was, pretty amazing. Where a lot of people saw that, you never saw that. So thank you for that.
No, that's okay. I mean, like I think from here I just saw what had heard from my friend about you, like more about your character, and who you were as a person. So that's what I saw. And I was excited to meet you, like this new friend of mine, which would have been you. And so having got to know you, I think we just hit it on pretty well, didn't we? Like
Yeah.
just got on like a house on fire, and it went from there, didn't it?
Yeah, I think we became like the best of friends for a long time.
Yeah.
Before anything developed. But you were definitely the person that I would go to when I needed to chat, or we would just hang out together. And then, from that, love blossomed. Shall we
Yeah,
say?
I guess they grew, didn't it?
It definitely grew. It wasn't like love at first sight. It was not definitely love at first sight for you. By the time love developed, I had probably lost around 80 kilos, which was a big accomplishment. And so fast forward, I think 6 or 7 years, the 2000, we got married.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was an interesting wedding, I will say, because I come from a typical Italian family, where my mum wanted the Italian wedding, and you being mixed race. So do you want to share a bit about your race?
Yeah, so my mum's from Singapore and my dad's from England. So I've got that bit of a mixture there. And even like it's so weird, right? Because you would think with an Asian mother, like there'd be so much high expectations, like through high school and everything, but get your A's and get your, don't get less than an A plus. But my mom wasn't like that.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, even though she was very strict with discipline, and bringing me up.
Still is.
Still is, yeah. Very strong. And she had her own ways back then, but God bless her. She was always just happy to see me put in the effort. And I think that's one thing that really taught me so much about not living to other people's expectations, but just doing the best that I could possibly do.
Yeah, that's really cool. So we had 3 cultures come together as a fusion of what we are now, and a lot of what we do is a fusion. In family gatherings now we have a combination of Italian food, Asian food. So we live a real fusion life, and I guess it's really important to mention another reason why we chose to get married quite early in the piece. Was your father was really unwell.
Yeah.
And one of his last wishes, being an only child, was to walk you down the aisle.
Yeah, absolutely. Which was such a blessing that he was able to do that,
Yeah.
We were so thankful that he was able to walk me down the aisle. And I think it was about 1.5 years later, he passed away.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the hardest moments in my life.
Yeah, because you were so close to your dad.
Yeah. I think I was very grateful to have you with us then, and like having that support during that time, because I went crazy.
Yeah.
Remember that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Like, I was just like hysterical when I came there.
Because even though he was ill, the day he passed away came as a shock, because it wasn't a progressive. Like he wasn't palliative care yet. He wasn't.
Well, he was meant to get treated, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was meant to get treated, and that morning he was talking to us, and by the afternoon his heart just failed him. So I think
give credit to the doctors and nurses that really tried to help him that day and
Yeah.
trying to bring him back, and they really worked on him. And for me, it was hard for me back then because I couldn't understand why that happened, and there was a lot of anger in my heart about that, but I worked through it. And I think, working through so much on ourselves has helped us to get through that.
Yeah. So fast forward a few years, we were trying to start a family.
Yeah.
Went through some tests, and then I found out that I couldn't have children.
Yeah. What was that for you when you first found out?
What was that like for me? I guess for me it was, first of all, shock, but then an immense sense of guilt.
Yeah.
Guilt because I was robbing you of your dreams. Shame.
Yeah.
And I think the shame is not associated of anything I couldn't, because obviously it was out of my control.
Yeah.
But more shame as in, what does this mean for me as a man?
So you had those expectations behind you, like in your own mind?
Do I have expectations? I think anyone that gets married at first wants to, start a family, and like I remember we would talk about having 12 kids just to stir each other up and things like that. And then we settled on having 4 children, and we had already named our children, like we had control over the sex or anything like that, seriously. But it's more the question of, this is it.
Yeah.
I think that hit me.
Yeah.
And then more the question of, I've stolen from you, or maybe stolen is not the right word, but yeah, stolen your dreams.
You felt like you took away that opportunity?
Yeah. And not only for me, but obviously you wanted to be a mother, and it's something that you always spoke about before this news. And I guess one of the things that, obviously, you never judged me.
And what was it that I told you? Do you remember when you?
I do. Yeah, because the day I found out, I obviously came to you and I said, look, this is the case, and if you choose to go our separate ways, I'm totally okay with that. And your reply was simply, I married you for who you are, not for what you could give me. And I think, even though at the time I could understand what you were saying, and I totally respected what you were saying, it didn't take away the guilt or the shame. Yeah. So, and that's, a whole thing. I think as society, we put so much emphasis on infertility that we haven't normalized it. And just the word infertility, like if we look at the facts, 1 in 6 couples will struggle through infertility. And, that's not, that's quite a lot. We're talking about a worldwide statistics of 1 in 6 couples. And I think the stigma around that is still quite negative, whether it be the female or the male. And definitely we know people that have separated due to it. It became our story. It's become part of our journey, which is, who we are now. Is there attachment to it? I think there's always in the back of your mind that sense of, I wonder what that would be like. But never that attachment of the hurt anymore, or the guilt. More a sense of wondering.
Right. Yeah. Is it like a what if?
What if, or things like that. But I think as society we have really put infertility in such a negative light.
I know, right?
And I think even the word infertility, like I think, is it childless by choice or childless by nature? Like, why are we putting labels on something? Because as soon as we put a label on something, we box that individual in that box. So, it was, we're talking about 2004, and then that began another journey, which we'll talk about in a moment. But Okay, that's my side of the story. What's it like for you?
I think for me, as much as I've mentioned many times in the past that I've always wanted to have children, and just hearing stories of growing up, hearing my dad with his big family and with brothers and sisters, I always had this inkling in my mind that it's meant for like a big family.
Yeah.
And it happens for your family, like
Yeah,
a huge family with all your cousins and everything like that, and your brother and his family. So that for me was already a blessing. And I figured that because of that, like what I told you, as you mentioned, that always remained true for me and has always remained true for me. I married you for who you are. And for me, it didn't matter whether we had children, whether we didn't have children. For me, I knew we had a mission, some mission. I didn't know what it was, but I knew there was something there. And I think that's what's kept me, kept my faith going and really helped me to get to these sort of things.
Okay, that's interesting because it kept your faith going, where it did the exact opposite to me. I began to doubt. I began to question a lot.
Yeah.
And I began to pursue other methods of thinking.
Yeah.
But I never lost hope as such.
Yeah.
But at the time, we did belong to a group that was not open to IVF and a group that was not open to a donor, especially because that was something we had to go through if we wanted to have children. And for a long time, I had a lot of resentment because I feel that they also stole opportunities from us. And which is really silly because we chose to belong there, so really I shouldn't resent others for a choice that I made.
I guess we allow ourselves to be influenced by the opinions and the beliefs of other people to direct our lives. And I guess that's why we needed to take stock and think, well, this is our life. We need to live it, according to who we are, you know what I mean?
Yeah, good point. So fast forward, once we started moving past what was then our belief systems that weren't what is not what we prescribe to now, we chose to start the journey of IVF.
Yeah.
And we chose to go with a donor. What was that like for you?
It was, I guess for me, it was a bit challenging and confronting. I guess it probably wasn't the nicest thing to have to go through, like for, I guess, any female to have to go through those sort of treatments and everything. And at the same time, I've always felt very anchored and grounded with your support. And just being there for me the whole way, like emotionally, physically, bringing me to appointments. And even though I know you felt like, you needed to be there for me, but like not everyone necessarily does that. And I've always been thankful for that.
Yeah. And unlike anyone that goes through donors, whether it be egg donation or sperm donation, must go through a whole series of counseling, psychological reviews and things like that. What was that part of it before we actually started the cycles?
The counseling.
The counseling and
Look, I found it very interesting because it's just like a random set of questions that they would ask me, and I think I felt like I was so ready, like, to go through this. I guess there was that eager anticipation of having children, the possibilities and the hope. And knowing that we would make good parents, so there was that excitement, and the fact that as well, this is an opportunity for us, that we've never been able to experience, and finally we're here going through this situation, and I'm so thankful as well for the support that my mom's given us during that time. Like, bless her, she was probably part of that group as well that struggled with that belief. But even through that, she still supported us a lot. Coming in, helping me after each treatment. So
because some of those treatments were quite invasive. I guess for me, what you did for me is you allowed me to choose the donors. And that was, like, even though you had the final say, you would allow me to narrow it down, and then we could narrow it down together. So giving me that liberty to be part of the process. And we weren't looking for a donor that was, looked like me and all that, because we believe for the sake of the child had to know from early on that they were a donor child. So it wasn't for the sake of the child looking like me or anything like that, but it was more you included me in that process and made me a part of it, which was really important. Yeah.
And I'm glad you felt like included like that, because I know it was so important for me that you're gonna be the father anyway.
Yeah.
Like whether or not it's it's from somewhere else, that you still got you're my partner, you're my life partner, you're my best friend and everything. Like we're in this through thick and thin, and I couldn't imagine anyone not doing this with anybody else. So of course I would just for that. That's true.
Yeah. Starting the cycles, by the first two you didn't fall pregnant, and then the third one you fell pregnant, and then miscarried shortly after. And I know that was an absolute devastating for you. You really grieved that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
It's such a mixed feelings, because it's like, wow, like something actually happened. And for me, I guess, like I said, I've always kept my faith through the whole thing, even though like probably a lot of people might have thought I hadn't, but I've always kept it there, like right, like I would actually go deeper rather than outwardly.
Yeah, and when you say faith, you're also talking about that inner strength within you. Yeah,
absolutely. And I just believe that if that hasn't happened, like at least I know they're meeting me somewhere like on the other side, and that's probably the only thing that kind of helped me really get through it, knowing that. But it's we still, like you've said before, we keep trying after that. I thought, okay, so it didn't happen the first time, we can keep trying again until we know either way. You know what I mean?
So fast forward another 3 or 4 cycles, you fall pregnant again, and you have another miscarriage. What was the second miscarriage?
Probably a lot more disappointing for me. Because I guess it just happened so quickly. It's really hard, because I'm thinking it's getting closer by this time for me, realizing, do I really want to carry on with this sort of not experiment, but this pathway? Is this something that I can like go through again and try again? But there was always that hope that okay, well, it wasn't as successful as the last one before I was carried.
Yeah, you carried this. The first one you carried a bit further. This one a bit less.
So I guess for me, I thought, oh, at least it happened quickly. So I can go through another cycle again.
Yeah, I think for me it was the feeling of helplessness.
What did that mean for you?
What did that mean for me? Oh, you're going into counselor mode. What did that mean for me? I think, wow, we're really getting up raw and personal now. I think it was that sense of guilt, because this is my fault. You have to go through this because of me. That sense of, again, shame and guilt, and not being able to do anything because I wasn't in control. And I think that's breaking point, is like, I have no control over this. Yeah, being so used to controlling everything. I am Italian, and, we like to control everything. And I think that's what was it, that sense of, this is actually something I cannot control.
And it sounds like that was pretty scary for you.
I don't think it was scary as such. I think it was more, what? It was fear of the unknown. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Okay, so you had another miscarriage, and I think we did, in total, we did 18 cycles. The last cycle, so this was over a period of 8 or 9 years. And at the time you were, during that, you were doing your meditation school. We were teaching NLP, and we just had to go quiet and retreat into ourselves for a while and allow ourselves to heal. I think the last cycle, I'm trying to think of the story. The last time we tried, none, I think they took out 8 eggs or something, but none of them fertilized.
And didn't get to transplant stage. So
that was your breaking point.
Yeah.
So that's when you said, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk into that?
Thank you. Yeah, I think me like that really made me decide that, like I think I've come to a point where, enough is enough.
Yeah. And you knew your body.
Yeah. I knew that like I didn't want to carry on with like putting so much hormones and everything. And I was already getting to an age already, getting into my 40s already. So I'm thinking, well, do I really want to be, a biological mother to a child at this age? Do I have the patience anymore for? And that doesn't mean I don't love kids. I mean, I actually still love kids. I love, seeing how, my mum interacts with other children as well and how excited she is.
Yeah.
Just thankful that she.
Which was another sense of guilt because you are an only child.
Yeah.
So it stops here. So that was another tremendous wave of guilt that both of us were feeling.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it does still play on my mind, and I think about that, and I feel kind of sorry for the fact that my mum may never have a grandkid, a biological grandkid.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm so thankful that she's supportive of our life, just taking what direction that we need to go. Thankful that we're in this together. We've got each other's back.
Yeah.
And that's our baby is our journey.
Yeah.
Like, things that we do.
Baby is our journey. So when the eggs didn't take, and that hit me harder than it hit you, because again, I think it's the layering of guilt, the layering of shame, the layering of, again, I think I blamed myself over every cycle. I blamed myself, like the 2 miscarriages that you had, because if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have to go through this. I think I've better share that with you. So I think blame was a huge thing, but obviously that played a huge toll on my mind, and I did go down a bit of a rabbit hole, but it actually started to affect my health.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we know that. When did you notice that?
Well, it was within that year that I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, and 2 years later lost the vision in my right eye. I guess for me, it's not knowing that was the actual cause. So it wasn't until I came at peace with that area of my life that I could come to peace with my autoimmune condition and losing vision in my right eye. Whereas I can't see out of my right eye, I only can see out of my left eye now. Like we'll talk about, it became all encompassing and all consuming, whereas sickness began to become the language in my mind and began to become my narrative.
Right. So it became that story.
It became the story. Yeah. So it was like a vicious cycle. As you know, when I was like really down, when they couldn't get my eyes under control, I couldn't drive at night. So for a year. So I want to talk about something.
Yeah.
Let's again go back to, childless by nature, and let's talk about the influences of others.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was trying to get at before. Like, do you feel like there was those social expectations that were placed on you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone, as well as I know, one dear friend of us we love dearly came up to us one day and said, "What's wrong? Are you shooting blanks or something?" Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you answer that? And this is, someone who's a lot older than us, but obviously doesn't have a filter. The fact is that, what do I answer that? Do you know what I mean? And we've had some really cool things said, like I remember one lady came up to you one day and said, "What's wrong with you? They've been married less time than you. Why aren't you pregnant yet?"
And calling us selfish, right?
And calling us selfish because we didn't want to have children, but not knowing our journey. So I really think whether someone is childless by choice or childless by nature, it's not up to others to make comments, because you don't know what that person is actually going through. And like they're two, but there's many more.
And I'm sure a lot of people go through that as well, like all these weird questions, random questions that people ask that can be very, I guess, hurtful and awkward, you know what I mean? Like, how do I answer that? And like, what is it?
Yeah, like
this is yours.
even like we'll go to an event or people we don't know and they'll say, how many children do you have? How do you answer that question when, obviously we don't have children, but why do we have to justify?
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't I don't have children be the complete answer?
Yeah.
But then I've heard people say, oh, I don't have children, but I have 3 dogs or 4 dogs, as though they're trying to substitute. And I don't believe, and I've done that, you've done that. I have a fur baby. But why is it necessary for us to do that?
Yeah.
Why can't people just accept when someone doesn't have children, whether it be by choice or by nature?
Yeah. I know, it's almost like children become part of someone's identity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, if you don't have children, what's your identity?
Yeah. I understand that people are trying to build rapport with others. And an instant way you can build rapport is, through family, and children, what school do your kids go to, what that, and that's I get that people can build rapport that way, but can we find other ways of building rapport? Like, why are we connecting through exactly what you said, something that is a perceived identity, but not who we are at the core of our essence and being?
Absolutely. And I think it's probably just human tendency though, isn't it? Like, just to try to read a situation to build rapport, but we forget that, we just see a person's shell. We don't see what they're going through 24/7 behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Or what, difficulties they might be going through. I mean, the world can be a pretty harsh place, which is always why I've had the, I don't know if it's a match or just this inner core belief that, whatever I can do to show kindness to someone, and kindness to you and to anyone that I come across, I would like to see myself as a safe person to come to, because the world out there is harsh enough.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Let's talk about isolation and loneliness. Yeah. So because of these words, because of we were going through, we isolated, and also a lot of our friends were having kids, a lot of people we knew were having children, and so they developed new friendships, and we felt the gap and the distance between friendships just get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
What was that like for you? I know what it was like for me, but what was it like for you?
Thanks for asking, because I know that everyone has a different story, and I think for me, I always found that I'd see friends having children. For me, it wasn't a case of jealous that they're having children, but when they pull themselves away and don't include us, I feel like just because you don't have children, like, we can't relate. We can't be part of their children's lives. So
it's like their children became their identity. Yeah.
I feel like, at the beginning they're like, oh, nothing will change, I was like, okay, yeah, right. But as soon as the children came along, everything changed.
And I think, if we really unpack that, it's probably done with really good intentions, not to hurt, not to hurt you or hurt me.
And I'm sure it's probably the opposite intention. Like, they're trying to be careful. They don't want to hurt us, because they feel like maybe if they're around, we're around children, we'll feel hurt because we see children and don't have children. But it was the opposite for me. I've always I would love to be part of their lives. I'd love to see how they grow up and be you see friends getting involved in the other children's lives, and they can become like aunties and uncles, and because I used to have that. My mum used to have friends
that's a very Asian thing, isn't it? Yeah.
One of my mom's friends didn't have children. She's never had children, and I've always cherished those moments where I got to spend time with her.
Okay, so that's a really good point. I think for me, I was the opposite.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be part of their story. I didn't want to be part of the journey because it was a constant reminder of my failures.
Okay.
But then realizing that I had less and less friends, and obviously things have turned around now. We've done a major shift in rewriting our narratives and rewriting our stories. But I guess that's what it was for me.
Yeah.
And I know, for instance, when someone would fall pregnant, you would rejoice with them. It didn't affect you at all.
Yeah, I think there was there's some situations where when I was going through like waiting for during the waiting period, waiting to have children, waiting for the news to like find out whether I'm pregnant or not pregnant, and then
The 2-week gap.
Yeah, that 2-week gap, and then just having
Which is torturous.
Okay.
Emotionally.
Yeah. Like you're just waiting. It's like all that anxiety is just building up, just waiting and waiting, just really hoping. And then you're tired. So being tired as well from the whole procedure, it doesn't help as well. So when hearing someone call my mum and saying, "Oh, we're pregnant,"
Yeah.
I'm like, for me it's like this is like I felt like this was my time.
Yeah.
And for me it was really hard for me to get through that.
Yeah.
Because I felt like, okay, like I wanted to have this done with my mum.
So that was more about your relationship with your mum.
That too, and like the fact that at the end I didn't have something.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't successful, and it's like,
yeah.
I would so love to have been, able to say, you're gonna be grandma too, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think I found that exceptionally hard at the time.
Yeah.
But I think gradually, like as time goes by, like the work that we've done with ourselves has really helped me to sort of slowly chip away at those negative feelings.
What about now when someone falls pregnant?
I'm so happy for them.
Yeah.
Like when I hear other people say that they're trying, like having success and, that things are happening for them, and like, that's exciting for me, like that's great news, because I'm come to a point now, I don't want to, I don't want to have children on my own.
Now we're not by a child, but we've moved to childless by choice. And that's a healing journey. That's like there was a time when you said enough is enough. You recognized your body. You recognized that it was playing a toll on your emotions, and you decided to protect your emotions. And 18 cycles. Like.
And like that little situation that we were talking about just before about that phone call that I got, and I'm pretty sure that was a lot of hormones going on in my body as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you are just pumped, like which had a major effect on your body.
I don't know how you dealt with it during that time.
Again, that sense of guilt. Well, this is my fault, so I just have to put up with what happens. Okay, so fast forwarding, we've made the choice, and the narrative in our head for about a year was, this is never going to happen now, we're not going to be children. There was a period of being lost. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like, it's kind of like just an interim, isn't it? Just between finally making that decision, like no more. Like no more tries.
And then figure out what's like.
Like, where do we go from here? Like, what's our...
Sorry, I'm cutting you off.
Yes, it's okay.
Italian. It was, we're talking about 12 years of our lives.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 12 years of our life, going to doctors, going for scans, starting cycles, having a break, starting another cycle, going through, websites to choose donors, things like that. So we're talking about a big chunk in our life. And yet you were a counselor at the time, you were still a coach at the time, you were still teaching mindfulness and meditation, and had lots of clients. And I had clients on as well. But then during, I think around the 8th year, we decided we just needed to come back to us and come back to core and come back to who we were. And that's why we just pulled back a bit.
Yeah.
Talk about that period of pulling back and healing for you.
So please remind me again what were we doing during that time?
Nothing.
When we were going out, where were we? We didn't see anybody, like just like shutting all social together.
Well, unless it was a family event.
Of course, but like friends or
we just needed the time to go inside our cave. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we couldn't reach out to you, sorry. Yeah, it's just something that we had to go through, isn't it? We just really needed to retreat back into
COVID.
Oh yeah, that did a lot for us.
That was great because I know COVID wasn't great,
excuse.
but it
Yeah.
actually, we didn't have to come up with excuses for not doing anything, and we could actually focus on our own journey and healing.
Yeah. So I guess it worked in our favor to that degree.
Yeah.
How did it work for you? Was that healing for you in that time?
I think it was it healing? It wasn't healing at first. It was, I felt lost, like I didn't want to continue training or seeing clients. I didn't really want to do any of that because again, this imposter syndrome had a big part because, in my mind it was like, how can I, be a coach and they're talking about their family when I don't have a family? How can I, teach, like other stuff when I have no experience, first-hand experience? And it's just really the narrative and the lies we feed ourselves.
Yeah.
Because now I know that skills are transferable no matter in what situations you gain those skills.
Yeah.
And that we can transfer skills into many situations. But it was that, I had a real sense of imposter syndrome at the time and just needed to pull back so that I can work through the narrative of my mind.
Yeah. So it's like I can imagine your mind was going crazily busy.
Yeah, and again, emotionally, I was wrecked because I was on massive doses of steroids to get my eyes under control and for my spine not to fuse.
Yeah.
So the steroids are playing with my emotions. I'm gaining weight again.
Yeah.
Like I was a good weight, and then I started gaining weight again.
Yeah.
So that was playing with my emotions. So I really felt that I needed time to be me behind closed doors and not be involved in people's lives, not listen to people's stories, because I needed to find out what my story was and how to rewrite my story.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until just making small chips away, small steps, trying to figure out what is it actually I want to do. And then just listening to people's stories is actually what brought healing. And I think stories, how many people out there are going through IVF but lose hope? And I know we're in the process of writing our book around, how to deal with IVF, how do you gain your life after IVF? What happens? Because there's so many books around how to fall pregnant and what diet you should eat, and oysters on this day and zinc on this day and all of that stuff. But there's nothing to help people through it at the end when all else fails.
Yeah.
People don't realize that we actually put a lot of hope in having family. We actually put our purpose in having a family. Whether it be good or bad, it just is. That's just the way we're programmed as humans. What happens when that purpose is smashed? So I guess when I actually came to the realization that I wanted to listen to people's stories of resilience, but I guess what's important to me is understanding that life can be shit. Life doesn't go according to plan all the time, and sometimes I think, as in the personal development and industry, put it out there, let it happen, blah 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 blah. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm saying there needs to be a balanced approach, because that can also end up with disappointment. Balance is the key to everything. There are areas in my life, in your life, that we still don't have balance in, and we're coming to that place of balance. One area that, because of my condition, is I really want to start exercising, but I'm taking small steps because I know that area is out of balance. But it's understanding that life doesn't go our way, but every day we can write a new chapter. Every day we can write a new paragraph. And you know what? If you only can write one word that day, then that's a start.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be a sentence. It doesn't have to be a paragraph. It doesn't have to be a page. But if one word is what you can write to create a new narrative, then you can do that.
And we're in complete control of those choices, aren't we?
Yeah. So I guess that was what got me out, not got me out, because I don't feel I was depressed, but got me out of that narrative of what now, what now, what now. For years I was like, what's next, what's next, what's now, what now? And was filling it with stuff that just wasn't congruent or wasn't at the core of who we are as a couple. You know, trying to look at different, you know, do we do this business, do we do that? And then when I actually realized that, you know, this podcast is about people and about their stories, and those stories can bring healing. Like, we're on the other side of 18 cycles of IVF, you know, 23 years of marriage. We're on that other side, and like we called it quits in 2018. Beginning of 18, so about 5 to 6 years. So it's taken that time for us to reestablish ourselves. And that's okay.
I think so. You know, everyone's journey is different, isn't it? You know, some people find it earlier, some people find it longer, but it's just about putting one foot in front of another. And I think a lot of people would probably look at you, or maybe look at us and think, you know, these people are so resilient. But what was it that helped you during all this time to put one foot in front of the other? Because I've always noticed that about you as well. You always, no matter what happened, you always tried to look for a solution. You always tried to, you know, do something. So what was it that helped you to do that?
Oh, gee, that's a good question. I think I believe that all of us are born with a purpose, and sometimes that purpose becomes unclear. Like, I remember at the beginning, I would always say, like, why? And now I realize that question just serves no purpose, because it can take you down rabbit holes. And what I think I've learned interviewing people, you know, coming up in the podcast, what I think I've learned the most is that everyone we've interviewed has said they will not change what happened to them because it's led them to where they are now. And I think that's been one of the most powerful realizations of interviewing so many people. Our story is just a story, you know, and this podcast is definitely not going to be about IVF. It's going to be about every single story, because it's about changing that narrative that once held us down. And you've identified that as well. IVF and infertility, or childless by nature, it's just one story, and there's so many. You know, we've interviewed cancer survivors, we've interviewed people that's been part of drunk drive accidents, you know, people that have rewritten their career stories. Like, but each story is a piece of the tapestry of what makes that person. So I think it was, you know, I think when we're closer to purpose, that's when we're happy and filled with joy. The more apart from purpose we are, the more disconnected we feel with source, or the more disconnected we feel with ourselves, the more our emotions are out of check. And I think sometimes we go through periods where we think our purpose is one thing, realizing that it's not, think our purpose is another thing, realize that it's not, and that's okay as well, until you find who you are. I don't even know what the question was. I feel there's so much to tell you the truth.
That's okay. You can't answer it anyway.
Okay, good. But I think if you come back to your true core of who you are as a human, and you know what, we've spoken to people. People have helped us clarify what that is. You know, you're a counselor. You ask great questions so we can really identify our core, you know. And then, you know, with me with coaching, then I can get, you know, what are those limiting beliefs that are holding us down, and we work through them. So, for instance, not being able to help people because we weren't parents was such a limiting belief that, you know, I set up in myself. You know, and I was like, really? Seriously. And one of the podcasts is all about self-love, and that's a great podcast. Coming out, listen to that podcast on self-love, where we interview an expert on self-love.
So just coming back to, you know, I guess, like, the whole thing you're talking about, finding your purpose and like discovering what is that, and like being, when you're closer to your purpose, you have more joy and more you feel like you're thriving in life. I remember there was a time when we were just training, doing meditation workshops and like doing NLP trainings and everything. I remember seeing that zest in your eyes.
Yeah.
And you had so much like joy and like that zest for life going on. So do you feel like maybe that sort of helped to realize that, okay, maybe you might have gotten away from that for a little bit? Because remember we took a break from that.
We took a break to heal.
Do you feel having had that little time has helped you realize it?
Yeah, I think there's always been moments of joy in our life. There's always been moments of purpose. There's always been moments of happiness. I think as a couple, and we're pretty resilient. We have gone through so much grief and death. Is it part of that? I think, for instance, being part of death cafes where we try to normalize the conversation around death and dying with people. And there's a podcast coming up about that as well, where we interview an expert around death cafes and death and dying. Being part of normalizing discussions, and that brings me joy. Big why? It's stories again.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're listening to people's stories and experience around death, grief, and dying. And so, does it bring me joy that someone's dying? No, it's not that, but it's the healing and the transformation that happens through the stories.
Yeah, and I guess it's almost like being a facilitator myself as well, just seeing, I guess, the light come on in people's eyes when they realize, oh, okay, I'm not the only one that's going through this, and there's that recognition that there is support available to them. And that there is a social network available.
So if I can ask you a question, where do you see yourself? Where do you see the podcast, and where do you see Rewrite Your Life Story for you?
For me, so where do I see it going?
What's your vision? I know we have a joint vision of what it is.
I think for me, like, I really like hearing the stories, and what I really hope from the podcast is for people to see that, hey, I'm not in this on my own, that whatever you're going through, whatever someone is going through out there, that they can take courage from these different stories, that, it's not always about all success all the time. Some of us have a lot of major times of failure. And it's just about learning, how can I step up? How can I take those next steps just to keep from spiraling further down? And just to take courage that it is possible to refine your purpose. It is possible to take a step forward, even if it is the tiniest little baby step. Every little step counts. And having a podcast like this, I really hope that people can find that social support and that encouragement and the courage to move forward. Did that answer that?
Yeah, it did. And I think for me, again, it's very much around what you said. It's around highlighting that for every struggle, there's always a moment of success as well.
Absolutely.
For every success, there is a time of tribulation. Every story is okay. Every struggle is okay. And there are ways to release the attachment and the emotion to that struggle. Whether it's working through it with a coach, whether it's working with a counselor, or whether it's just, you're a big believer in journaling, and you've taught me to journal, and you've created the Brain Dump Journal, which helps people with a series of questions. And it's about rewriting that story with that as well. So
how did that work for you? Because I know that, like, you did go through a stage of journaling as well yourself. What was it like for you? What's it?
Well, as you know, I journal, and it just allows me to. For me, journaling allows me to reflect on the day, reflect on what I did good, reflect on what I can improve on. I won't say what I did bad, because we're not kids here. It's what we can improve on, and then move on. I think it was through journaling that I realized the power of stories as well.
Absolutely. It does come back to stories, doesn't
it?
It comes back to your own story, like the narratives in our head. And realizing, well, how can I change that? Like, if every day and every page is a new chapter for us, and we've got that blank page and we've got the pen for ourselves, we can take charge and rewrite that for ourselves.
Any closing thoughts you want to share, Sharlene?
I really enjoyed this chat. So I hope it's been encouraging for people out there, and Hope it's been a great tool for people to listen to and take courage, and look forward to new podcasts.
For me, I just think, if, there's always support available, there's always help, whatever your struggle is, whatever your journey is, and stories are a great way to heal as well, because they show other people's resilience in that time, and everyone can rewrite their life story. Well, that's it for our episode number 1, and we will be back shortly with episode number 2. Okay, so just a recap on today's episode. So how was that, like us having that chat?
So that was really interesting, because I found that there were so many areas that I didn't realize that you had felt during the situations where I was going through the IVF, and the different feelings about the whole situation of your infertility, or our infertility, like more precise. So I just felt that I was unaware that you had so much guilt. So it was like, wow, that was insightful for me.
Okay, yeah. I guess, well, I didn't want to burden you even more with how I was feeling at the time, but yeah, that's cool. And I guess, again, that was me trying to protect you, but also shielding myself as well. So, and that's okay. It just is, really. Yeah. I guess for me, it's the first time we've been so vulnerable.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of fear attached to it at the moment. But you know what? If our story helps someone else, that's the whole purpose of Rewrite Your Life Story, and to help others with sharing their stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, did you find anything that was surprising to you?
No, not really. I think, again, the surprising part for me is coming out of our comfort zones and being so vulnerable, because it's part of our life we've kept so private.
Yeah.
And now we're sharing it with,
the public
and hundreds of people. So I guess that's the surprising thing of me stepping out. But hey, if it helps one person in their journey, then it's worth it, because again, it's about normalizing. Why are we putting a stigma on something that's so common?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And why that word has so much negative effects. So why not, kind of be a nicer word, like childless by nature or childless by choice? Because one is by choice and one is not by choice, but they're still the same outcome. So that's what it is for me. But also letting the public know that there's no attachment to it anymore, because we've moved on and we've rewritten our story.
I know, and I know for me, I've seen so much growth in your life, and for myself, like I know that we're definitely not the same people that we were back then when we were going through it. Yeah. So I think we learned along the way, don't we?
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to our podcast today. We hope you found it informative and inspiring. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and share it with your friends and family. Also, make sure to visit our website at www.rewriteyourlifestory.com.au to learn more about our mission, products and services. And remember, you have the power to rewrite your own life story. So go out there, face your challenges head on, and create the life you've always wanted. We'll see you in the next episode.